Hello, everyone, and good morning. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. Today is December 2nd, 2024, and do we have a week? I want to give just a little recap of the new moon that happened yesterday. And I will pull up the chart just to point out a couple of things. That way, each one of you can have that chart if you want to have it to study yourself. And then I'm going to go into the astrological conversations that, number one, are held within that chart, but are perfecting throughout the week. I want you to think of this week as the starting of a sentence happened with the new moon in Sagittarius yesterday, and the exclamation point at the end of that sentence is going to happen on December 7th when Venus and Ceres enter into the sign of Aquarius and meet up in the sky with Pluto. This is a really pivotal week for us all. If you're someone who consciously works with astrology for your own individual growth and also for your spiritual growth, for your own evolution. So before I dive into this, I have just a couple of announcements that I'm going to reiterate, and then I will get into this. On December 7th, the day that Ceres conjuncts Pluto and Venus, I'm going to be teaching my first class within the Goddess Asteroid series that I put up a poll on the YouTube, and you guys voted that you would want to have a class series with me going over the asteroid goddesses. I've had a few people sign up. I would love to see more of you. I think that that's a perfect introductory class, considering that on that day, I'm going to be teaching about Ceres and Lilith, and that is the day that Ceres and Lilith are both dynamically aspecting things within the sky, having beautiful conversations with different planets and luminaries and whatnot. The Asteroid Goddess series is a 5-week class. It is going to be held every other Saturday. On the Saturdays, I do not have my children. And like I said, it kicks off on the 7th. So this coming Saturday, with the first class being Ceres, going over Ceres and Lilith. If you want to attend the whole asteroid series, it is only $135. Each class, I will go over 2 asteroids that I feel really work together beautifully. I will go over the myth and the archetype and how to utilize it in a natal chart or how to look at it in your own natal chart. I will give examples that will either be prior clients who have given permission or of well-known people within the collective. Like I said, that whole class series is $135. The classes will be live. They will be held over Zoom. If you only want to participate for one live class or just for a couple, they are only $35 a piece. You will receive the recordings afterwards, so even if you can't show up, you will still get the recordings, the teachings. You will get the presentation. I'm sending the presentation, so the PDF file of that as well for you to have and to study, continue your studying. If you want to sign up for the whole series or just one or a few of the classes, I will post a link below in the description. I'm old school. You will have to email me and tell me if you want the whole class series or which class you want, and I will send you an invoice through PayPal, and once it's paid for, I will send you the class links, and I will add you to the email list, where you get to ask questions, participate in community, and further your own learning of astrology. The other thing that I want to say is that Sagittarius, it is your birthday special. You have until the 20th to book your birthday special where you get to have a 90-minute reading with me over Zoom that will be recorded and sent back to you after our session. And it is only for $75. Well, I will answer any of your questions, even they pertain to asteroids, transits, whatever. I will go over your natal chart. I will also go over your solar return, meaning what is coming up for you this year, so you can consciously work with that energy. Lastly, If you are wanting to get in before the new year, you are going to have to book now because the last week of December, I am taking off again to spend time with my family and to really tap into some of my spiritual practices, um, and to develop some of my own learning. And so if you are wanting to see me, you've thought about it, if you're wanting to get in before the new year, you're wanting to know what the new year is going to be, I don't know, whatever questions you have, you're going to need to book now, or else you'll have to wait until after the new year, whenever my other appointments will open. And you can go on my website and you can look at all of the things that I offer, like tutoring or packages of readings or relationship readings, whatever it may be. And as always, I'll put a link to my website down below as well. So without further ado, let me show you the chart for the new moon. Let me recap it and to tell you what this week was starting off with. And then let's work into this week and really break everything down. That way you guys can work with this energy. It is a time to be alive and for growth and for evolution and for reconnecting with oneself, one's own unique intrinsic soul nature. And this week is really, really reflecting that. The other thing that I want to say about this week that I'm seeing is, well, let me show you this chart and then I'll get into that. So I want to point out, in evolutionary astrology, we love Pluto. It's speaking to our soul. Pluto's in Aquarius. It's in the second house. It is ruled by Uranus retrograde in Taurus in the seventh house. The reason why I'm also pointing out Pluto is the ascendant of this chart is Scorpio. Then we have this new moon at 9 degrees, 32 minutes in Sagittarius in the first house. It is ruled by Jupiter retrograde and Gemini in the seventh house. And it is opposing its ruler, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. So I want you to keep this in mind. There's also quite a few conversations happening in this chart, but I'm going to go over them day by day because these conversations are perfecting throughout this week. All right. So for those of you who you can go back and look, but if you want to write this down to have this chart, this is the Greenwich, England chart that happened December 1st, 2024 at 6:19 and 44 seconds in the morning. Okay. So let's break down this week. This is really important. The other thing I did not mention is that Mercury retrograde in this chart is trining Chiron in Aries, which is also retrograde. That is perfecting today for the second time. And the reason why I bring this up is this is really, really, really important. When we're dealing with relational dynamics, speaking of our inner relationship to self, which is very important, and then our relationships with others as well, indicative with the things we've been really working on, wanting to work on with the lunar south node in Libra and the lunar north node transiting through the sign of Aries. It's really important that what we've been dealing with for the last year and a half is highlighting where extremes and imbalances have played out pertaining to this dynamic of our attachment. Do we have a secure attachment? Do we have an anxious avoidant attachment? Do we have a dismissive avoidant attachment? Do we have a fearful avoidant attachment? These are all things that are really being highlighted even if you don't know what those attachment theory is. And I can break this down. There's also a lot of information out there on attachment theory. The reason why I'm bringing this up is the new moon in Sagittarius is really indicating this time period that we are starting where we're wanting to look at not only the beliefs that we have internalized, Jupiter and Gemini retrograde, falling in the seventh house of that new moon chart, that have perpetuated extremes, meaning the beliefs that we've taken in stem from our conditioning that we're wanting to dissolve, Saturn and Pisces right now, as a way to restructure one's consciousness so one can have secure attachment to self and with others, okay? The new moon in Sagittarius is also speaking about recovering one's own nature, one's own authenticity, what feels and is true and authentic for each one of us individually. If you are wanting to have a secure attachment with others and with yourself, you're wanting to have healthy self-esteem, you're wanting to mature emotionally, then a shift in one's consciousness needs to happen where one understands the truth of who they are, and not the Jupiter, Gemini retrograde, the internalized messages and beliefs that one has taken in. And this is really a double signature with the new moon, considering that Mercury and Jupiter rule each other, meaning they're in mutual reception and they are opposing each other. And that opposition will perfect for the second time on the 4th, by the way. So we're really looking at throwing off retrograde, reliving, re-experiencing, redoing in order to resolve, on the one hand, the distortion of Mercury, Sag, and on the other hand, the natural expression of this. The new moon is wanting us to initiate a cycle, to champion, to have courage, to break new ground, and understanding what is real, authentic, and true about oneself, as opposed to the beliefs and the learned guilt, shame, judgment one has taken in stemming from conditioning. That is a recap of the new moon in a very generalized sense, very on par for Sagittarius. But I wanted to say this because so much of this week is really looking at all of these internalized messages that impede upon us having a secure attachment with self, and then being able to attract relationships where we have secure attachment with others. Chiron in Aries, all right, it is square trine to Mercury in Sag retrograde. So we're really wanting to throw off these dynamics of what has been learned that is impeding upon these wounds that are impeding upon us knowing our authenticity. Wanting us to throw off and liberate from where we're not creating new action to cultivate new patterns, to become more secure, to understand ourselves fully and authentically. So we're looking at how are we to decondition? How do we change our attachment styles? So attachment styles are really, attachment theory is more of a traditional psychological approach. When we're looking at attachment styles, we're looking at, I hear in like new age groups, our programming, right? Or I like to say our conditioning, what has been learned. So let me go into this through an evolutionary, through astrology sense. If you are new to evolutionary astrology, you're looking at reincarnation and the things that you're bringing in from prior lifetimes that can be very subconscious, that are known and familiar. When we come in, we choose exactly what we're needing. in order to evolve. It's up to us. It's free will to make the choice to do that. So a lot of us will pick a family or friends or partners. We call it like the karmic relational dynamics that reteach or recondition or reprogram, however you want to do it, into an attachment style that oftentimes is preventing our own evolutionary growth. All right. So if you're someone, and I get a lot of clients like this because I am someone who's been liberating myself from masochism. If you're someone who has been dealing with masochism, like you always feel you need to atone, you always need to apologize for everything, you're the container for everyone to kind of dump on. You take on all of the shame, all the guilt, all the judgment, especially like if you're someone who came from a narcissistic family system, or you attract these partners who are, you know, use and abuse, right? Well, you're attracting them for a reason. And it's because you might have learned that your self-worth only comes from what you can do. Your value only comes from what you can do. And so you're always feeling guilt and shame, and it's perpetuating this psychological dynamic. Oftentimes, I see this with fearful avoidant attachment styles. Oh, come on, Rennie. Which is a very interesting dynamic. Fearful avoidance usually attract like dismissive avoidance or narcissist or drug addicts or come from a narcissistic family. They're usually someone who has an attachment style where their wound is that of not being heard, seen, understood for who or what they are. Okay. Again, this is going into, we're recovering our authenticity. And so we're needing to decondition from our attachment styles in order to become more securely attached. Okay. This is really seen throughout this week. This is really also seen today. Venus is in a disseminating trine to Uranus and Taurus, which is the ruler of Pluto. Aquarius and Uranus is about shedding the skins of the past of where we've over-identified with conditioning. If we're needing to recover our own unique individuality, a Leo-Aquarius dynamic, which is very in our face right now, with that Mars Leo about to go retrograde later this week on the 6th. And then we'll oppose for the second time Pluto on January 2nd. We're dealing with the needing to recover our own unique soul individuality. And this new moon is really saying the way to do that is to understand one's own truth, one's own authenticity, in order to liberate from the messages and the beliefs of the past, in order to become Taurus, Uranus and Taurus, secure. So this is a week where Venus today at 24 degrees, Capricorn is trining Uranus and Taurus. Capricorn is conditioning. So there can be a wealth of information that comes up this week that is disseminated, that we can understand, where we can have an integration of, I learned this. I was conditioned to be this way. And therefore, maybe I avoid certain situations. Anytime someone's vulnerable with me, it makes me freaked out. And over time, I start pulling back. That's a dismissive, avoidant attachment style. And that usually happens when someone grows up in a family where their parents, Capricorn, authority, don't really argue that much because they're actually avoiding any type of vulnerability. And so it can create this attachment style of, I'm freaked out when someone else is vulnerable with me. We're also dealing with anxious avoidant, which is like someone who, anytime that there's a problem, they become very anxious and they do like the fawning tactic. They just want to fix it right then and there. And that's usually happens whenever someone grows up with parents who might have had a bunch of kids or or were working, and so they can attach to their child and show secure attachment, but then they get too busy and then they detach. And so it creates this anxiety. You can almost think about like dogs or animals who have separation anxiety. That's an anxious attachment dynamic. And it's usually their parents were there, but they just couldn't give the child all of the time that they really needed. And so it creates an anxiousness. And so that person is typically, anytime that there's an argument or something, they're afraid of, oh my God, is this person going to go away? And so I need to fix this right now. I need to talk about this right now. These are all things dealing with conditioning. And then someone who is securely attached, which is the it exemplifies Taurus, all right? Someone who is securely attached, Taurus in a natural expression, has healthy self-esteem. They understand their senses, feelings, the things going on in their body, and their own cognitive dynamics, which when you meet senses with cognitive, you're thinking, Mercury, Gemini, that's where you get emotion. And so they can understand that I'm not going to take on projected beliefs or someone else's opinion of me because I know my authenticity, Sagittarius. I know who I am. And so I'm not going to take someone's perception of me as rejection. I'm whole into myself. I feel secure within myself. That's like someone who's been dating or something and they realize that maybe someone's starting to pull back. And so they ask that person, like, hey, I'm seeing that you're pulling away. And that person doesn't know how to communicate it. And they don't take it personally. And they just say, this is where I draw the line in the sand. I want authentic communication, and that's not going to meet my needs, and I can meet my needs myself. And so I'm not going to take that as something wrong with me. I'm going to take that as that's just who you are, and we're in different places. And so the gap is wider there, if that makes sense. So Venus today trining Uranus can really be where we're understanding the conditioning around our attachments, our attachment styles, and the need to liberate from the trauma or the past dynamics to become more Taurus, more secure within. Venus is also, it was falling in the second house of that new moon. So as we regain our authenticity, what's true for us, we become more secure. The way to become more secure, and this is very important, okay? Especially with Chiron and Aries retrograde this week, it's ruled by Mars in Leo. Leo is very much about having self-love, self-dignity, self-respect. It's about being dignified. Um, Chiron is about changing one's awareness around our wounds in order to become more secure, to not be masochistic or to fall prey to the known and familiar way of being insecure. Is when we're looking at this whole deconditioning dynamic, we're needing to really look at and tap into this new moon and Sag dynamic, remembering that Mercury's in Sagittarius trining Chiron right now, really feeding into what I'm speaking about, which is rejection. I'm not saying that people's emotions aren't valid or their feelings aren't valid. But when you can utilize Uranus and Pluto and Aquarius energy to observe and to objectify something, it creates a bit of a detachment in order to look or gaze into the box and see the truth, Sag. Okay. So what I mean by this is we're trying to culminate all of these underlying issues relationally before the node shift in January. And in this cycle of Libra Aries axis, nodal axis, a really good way to look at this is when you're wanting to connect with your truth and you're feeling rejection, right? You feel it in your body. your face is hot, your heart is pounding, your stomach is in knots, I want you to think about, where's the first time I learned rejection? And then what I want you to do is I want you to think about who you are, the truth, Sag. Who are you naturally? Are you someone who tries to do good? Do you like to help people? You like to communicate with people. You like to be authentic. You like to show up in the world and be kind and to have fun and to be helpful and to be a good friend, a good listener, all of the things. I want you to think about the things that you actually value in yourself. And that can really liberate from this dynamic that creates distortions and insecure types of attachment. All right. Again, Venus trining Uranus is really helping us to, one, self-reflect, Capricorn, Venus and Capricorn, on our own inner dynamics in order to liberate Uranus from the imbalances and the extremes that have perpetuated an unknowing of how to be inwardly secure. Now, I'm not saying everyone is dealing with this, but I'm going to say the people that I've been having come into my practice lately have been dealing with a lot of this. And I really find this fascinating that this week is bringing this up because in a spiritual sense, we are meant to be secure. Before patriarchal times, we were securely attached. There was the way that indigenous tribes taught everything. This is what I mean by the natural laws of giving, sharing, and including. There was no rejection or unless you just were on the offhand whack, there was no rape, there was no war back then. So people were securely attached and they were connected spiritually, which is the ultimate attachment. When one is spiritually attached, Saturn and Pisces, Neptune and Pisces, this need to recover this principle. When one is spiritually attached to source, to nature, one feels secure within because one knows that everyone is equal, thus no need for the feelings of rejection. I'm not saying that rejection doesn't happen, but when you're secure, you know that that has nothing to do with you. That person's perception has nothing to do with you. You know that you're a good, authentic person, Sag. So Jupiter on the 4th is going to oppose Mercury again for the second time. This is really leading up to this energy of, I can throw this off. I can also throwing off the internalized messages and beliefs that have kept me from being secure within myself and having healthy self-esteem I can have an integration of what is true and authentic by just observing, who do I show up in the world as? And there's not a need to be seen anymore because you know who you are. That's being secure within oneself. That's Pluto in the second house of that chart. That's Venus in the second house of that new moon chart. Pluto is also trining the south node today, the second, and sextiling the north node. So Pluto in Aquarius is really helping us get to the bottom of where we've over-identified with these relational imbalances, these extremes from conditioning. Venus, Capricorn, ruling that south node. And what it's doing is it's helping us reconnect with our own unique individuality that is authentic. And then the sextile to the north node is helping us to put in place these new patterns of awareness that are Mars and Leo, the ruler of that north node, filled with the creative force within inside of each one of us that is authentic, that perpetuates new patterns of self-love and self-respect and self-dignity. On the 6th, Mars is going to retrograde. This is going to give us an opportunity to work with all of this energy. Like I said, it's going to oppose Pluto for the second time. The first time it did it, it was in Cancer, Capricorn. So we were trying to throw off where we weren't getting into our emotional body stemming from conditioning. And this time it's about a chance to recover our unique individuality through the liberating from where we've over-identified with the conditioning, how we've been trying to restructure our consciousness. Saturn in Pisces was ruling that Pluto in Capricorn. And now it's about integrating self-love and self-respect through honoring our own unique individuality and knowing that each one of us are just as important as everyone else. We all have our own trauma, our own conditioning, our own learning that we're coming in with. But the key is that if you want to do Aquarius, Leo, is sometimes you might be the person who's stepping outside of the family. Sometimes you might be stepping outside of the friend group. Sometimes you might be needing to be a group of one and to just Leo mirror what it looks like to be sovereign and to be in self-love and self-respect and to shed the skins of the past that have nothing to do with your authentic nature. And then this is really, really amplified on the 7th. When Pluto, Ceres, and Venus are all conjunct in the sign of Aquarius. Ceres is about recovering one's own soul through nature. Venus is about our inner relationship to self. And in Aquarius, it's about liberating from the conditioning that prevents that so there can be a recovery. And so this is starting this new evolutionary cycle of really diving into one's own unique authenticity. It's almost like understanding what we've over-attached to detach from it, to liberate, to clear space, to bring in our unique, authentic nature in order to feel more secure and whole, to have a restructuring. And Uranus and Taurus is ruling Venus, Ceres, and Pluto. So that can be where what feels authentic is I'm getting back out into nature. I'm breathing with the wind. I'm connecting. I'm observing. I'm seeing the truth as a way to fortify my inner relationship to self. I can go out there and I'm always going to be accepted as long as I'm accepted by myself. That's the only thing that really matters. Because if you're speaking about it from a spiritual sense too, which is very much held within these energies. By the way, Neptune is still technically sextile to Uranus. It's about reintegrating that spiritual principle of you came here and you were made perfectly imperfect in order to help evolve not just your own soul, but also goddess. And so Mars and Leo is really about championing and fighting and being your own inner warrior to help the collective to continue to individuate from these patriarchal, distorted ways of being separated from the truth, Pisces, the actual, total, universal truth. And so that's about really recovering one's own authenticity and the truth of who one is. That you're worthy, that you're special, that you're important, just as anyone else is, or anything else. And that you do have something unique about yourself, that you're meant to shine in order to help the collective move forward, in order to mirror that. And that helps one become very secure to where the outside, we look at it as a spiritual dynamic of this is teaching me something. This is helping all of us connect that Piscean pure emotion of where has my thinking and my feelings, are they perpetuating an own inner crisis within me? Because I've been taught to think that this feeling is correlated with that. When really, whenever we're being secure within ourselves, we understand most of the time that people's perceptions about us have nothing to do with who we actually authentically are. And so this is a time to start observing Venus, Ceres, Pluto, and Aquarius. our inner relationship to self, Uranus and Taurus ruling that, in order to continue to liberate from the conditioning that says that we're separate from everyone else when we're not. Because that actually creates security within when we understand that each one of us is unique and whole unto ourselves, that never goes away. That is Sagittarius distorted belief stemming from Capricornian conditioning is what's has us thinking that. So it's about recovering these natural principles held within these archetypes and understanding that we can be secure and have healthy self-esteem, and then we can attract. Venus and Aquarius conjunct Ceres and Pluto. It's like doing this work, you're going to attract your community that is on your same Aquarian vibration when you're doing this work. So if you felt alone or you've been having a lot of trauma come up around past instances, it's because the decluttering of the patriarchal BS is wanting to be liberated from in order for the structure of one's consciousness to change and to expand and to reconnect with one's truth. Because we really need that in the world right now, quite frankly. I don't know if this video is making sense. This is just like what I've been seeing astrologically. I also want to say that Lilith is in Sagittarius, and Lilith is about our most undistorted natural expression of who we are. And it's in Sagittarius. So it's just it's echoing this need to Jupiter retrograde in Gemini to throw off the internalized messages and beliefs that are keeping us from knowing our truth, Sag. And the other asteroid I want to just speak to a little bit is that Sophrosine is at 18-19 degrees Capricorn this week. And Sophrosine can really help us to transmute the principles of Venus and Neptune. And so it's speaking to having temperance around looking at Capricornian conditioning and self-reflecting in order to dissolve that conditioning that's been learned, where we feel depressed or futile or judged or shamed, and we're carrying it, and it really has nothing to do with who we authentically are. So this is your week. Later on this week, I'm going to go more into this Venus Ceres Pluto conjunction, but I think that this is enough for everyone to kind of chew on for now. But I would definitely look at, I find it interesting. I think because I worked in mental health, I also was in therapy for like 22 years. I love looking at traditional therapy or psychology, like attachment theory, and then looking at it through a spiritual lens, like through an evolutionary lens, which attachment theory really is dealing with our own conditioning. It's like the bottom line of why are we calling in specific relationships or relational dynamics karmically? What is my attachment style? And also, where are those learned messages and conditioning coming from? And ultimately, it's about taking accountability and responsibility because, like, we chose this. And it's not to suffer, it's to liberate and to reconnect with sovereignty. And this is the lifetime to do it, right? We're not living in all of this chaos to not do that. Chaos has a way of forcing us out. I know this better than anyone. Growing up in the family that I grew up in, growing up in the state that I grew up in, with the only conditioning factors, at some point it does liberate you because you're tired of Libra listening to the BS, or you're tired of Libra acquiescing and trying to do the things that people are telling you that you have to do that are so against your nature that at some point in time you say, to hell with this. And I see a lot of people doing this right now. And the reason being is because it helps to bring activation to the collective. There's so much exclusion going on that there needs to be enough people who are rooted in this type of dynamic that start to help the Libran scales come back into balance. That way we can harmonize at some point. And I would rather be doing this now with the South Node in Libra than whenever the South Node is in Virgo and crisis starts happening because we denied something around our authenticity. So I hope that I made sense of this astrology this week. I've being around my kids, and I think with Mars and Leo, and it's Mars and Leo is falling in my fourth house, by the way. Um, I had a lot of time to observe the astrology and even children and to ponder on this. And then whenever I looked at the astrology further, I was like, this is so on par. And how can I articulate this in a way that maybe merges traditional psychology or therapy, which I'm not a therapist. I did work. I want to say that. I I did work in mental health, but I am not a therapist. But I have a lot of experience in it. And uh I wanted to merge the two and try to do it in a more spiritual, evolutionary way that is more able to be grasped. Um, so I hope that this helps. And again, I will go over that Pluto Venus Ceres conjunction later this week, further, more on a broader level for the collective. But I just want you to understand that that is really reflecting this time to liberate from past trauma and as Ceres and Venus move over Pluto in a new phase conjunction, it's about reconnecting with one's own unique individuality. There's a reason why Aquarius sextiles Sagittarius, because on the one hand, it's an integration of one's own authenticity to be integrated into one's own individuality. Authenticity, Sag, individuality, Aquarius. It's also about liberating Aquarius from beliefs that impede upon one knowing one's authenticity and individuality. So this is your week. There's a lot of growth that can happen when you just start Sag pondering this stuff. And your intuition will come in like a lightning bolt to help you liberate from the things because the astrology is really reflecting the collective who are willing and wanting to evolve through these dynamics that a lot of integration can happen. And this can even go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I will try to get into this in other ways, in an archetypal way later on this week, dealing with that triple conjunction. But for now, this is what I'm really seeing is we're trying to really reconnect with these universal timeless principles around being secure and being spiritual. And that being spiritual is being secure within oneself. It's almost, I would say, the most spiritual thing that you can do because when you're secure within yourself, you're connected to something much higher and you're able to honor it instead of worrying about all the bullshit out there. So anyway, I hope each one of you has a beautiful week. I'm looking forward to you all who've signed up for my asteroid series. I hope more of you do. I have Jupiter on my ascendant, Venus and Sag in the eighth. I love questions. So if you have questions about those goddesses that I'm going over, like bring them. I would love to answer whatever you have. Anyway, have a beautiful week. Give yourself grace. Detach from what is not true or authentic about you. And truly, the South Node in Libra, ruled by that Venus that's about to enter into Aquarius, is about liberating from the voices of others, from what we've taken in and internalized. So there's your week. I hope to see more of you soon. And yeah.